Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for the third webinar in this series on educator retention. This webinar focuses on fostering a positive school culture to drive retention. I'll mention that at the bottom of the screen and in the chat is a tiny URL you can access for the resources for this webinar series, including today's webinar, webinar number 3 in that series. You'll want to follow along because in addition to viewing the slide deck, you can also view a useful interactive note taker that has a number of resources. Especially, I would say that the note-taking document for this webinar is quite useful. It has some very useful resources that you will want to check out. So before we get started, my name is Megan Steiner. I work on the statewide school improvement team for Pennsylvania, supporting schools with human capital strategies from recruiting and retaining educators through developing induction and retention. And we have here two colleagues, two experts from Urban Schools Human Capital Academy who are going to talk to us about this particular area of educator retention. So with that, I will hand it over to Craig and Jody.
Thank you, Megan. Happy to be with everyone again, and welcome to the third webinar in the series. And for those that were able to attend the first two, welcome back. My name is Craig Chin, and quickly, my colleague Jody Buckott-Spoler is also going to be presenting as well with me. So today we're going to start with a little bit of a welcome and warm up with around this area of culture and school culture and how that drives retention. We talk about the key elements. We're actually going to share some case studies and hopefully drive some interactivity and some feedback and some comments and discussion with regarding to that. We're going to share some strategies and tools to both identify, foster, and nurture a great culture. And then we're going to close with some of the questions of discussion that might come up at the end. So if you don't mind, a small favor I'm going to ask everyone, if you could rename yourself in Zoom, in addition to your name, maybe if you can include your role in your LEA name, that would be wonderful. And as we start to share via chat, then we can get a sense of who else is in the Zoom session with us today. So meeting norms for our time together this afternoon. We encourage everyone to focus on the student experience as we talk about different strategies, maybe even different research or different ideas to either incorporate or to pursue. We want everyone to think of how will this affect our students and how will this affect our student learning, if you will. We encourage you to describe behaviors, not people. If there are certain policies or actions that you want to share that's working well, or in some cases that you might be struggling with, again, we want to hear more about the behaviors that's to describe as opposed to individuals and people. We want you to share your experiences, I mentioned. These includes both wins and losses. Ask questions of us and each other. We understand that although there might be a trend with different strategies that might be working for a lot of different systems out there that's beyond the state of Pennsylvania, it might be, there might be stuff that you tried and doesn't work. We also want to hear that feedback from each of you. If not important, or maybe not, maybe most important, what is learned here leaves here. We want you to apply this to your own role and apply this to your own situation and your own LEA. And last but not least, respect the need for confidentiality. Some folks might be sharing some of the struggle points, right? Or some things that aren't working as well in their particular organization. And we encourage everyone to respect, the confidentiality of folks that are sharing. So quick, warm welcome. Via chat, I'd like you to share when you think about the best job you've ever had, what was true about the adult culture in that either the school or organization that you work with. Share your thoughts via chat, please. Thank you. Yep, that's a great one. Definitely this culture around family, learning, growing together. The first shout out was great too, sharing successes. Everyone cared about the teacher, right? Everyone's rowing in the same direction. Thank you, Adam. Christina, great point about diverse perspectives and cultures and celebrating them. That's all wonderful. And as you'll see, as we go through our materials together today, a lot of these themes are going to resonate. In addition, there might be a few other things that will raise as well. So again, as other things percolate and come up, please feel free to share via chat, but we're going to move on. And thank you, Tina, for talking about safe spaces and offering inclusion, respect, and tolerance. So if you have experienced our previous webinars, this is a framework that we use that resembles sort of the employee life cycle. So if I were to start around 1 o'clock, what pipeline development and recruitment is the work that's being done to find out where are our effective sources of talent. What are we doing proactively and actively to get folks excited about coming to work for your particular system? How are we selecting and hiring, right? Think of, yeah, we can create great pools of talent, but if we don't have the right practices in place to select from that pool, then we're sort of missing the target. Workforce alignment is all the work around how do we get our best staff, our best teachers, if you will, in front of the kids who need them the most. Research will show that typically the highest need schools typically have the least experience and maybe even the least qualified teachers in front of them. Career management and retention, think of this as what are the things in place to allow employees to grow? What is things in place to motivate them to stay? Again, as we know, a lot of teachers and staff, for that matter, not everyone wants to follow the traditional path of becoming an assistant principal or a principal, if you will. Some of them might want to keep, if you will, a foot in the door of their classroom or stay connected to their kids. So what are the other leadership opportunities that could be available to them to allow them to do that? Total compensation and benefits. So a lot of this is how can we start to lever both benefits and compensation as a strategic lever to help drive, not only attract great talent, but also to keep them. In this concept of principals, human capital leaders, this is the idea that principals play a outsized influence, if you will, on who decides to come to work for them and who decides to stay. And from our perspective, this is not about sending the message that principals need to do more work, but it's more about what tools and supports can be provided to them, knowing that they have a huge influence on not only attracting but keeping great talent. And at the center of this whole thing is how can we drive and improve educator quality. But I also want to point out that, for a lot of school systems, you might be struggling to hire for a lot of support staff. These could be bus drivers, this could be custodians, among others, could be food service workers, right? So just think of this cycle also trying to drive staff quality, not just teacher quality. So next, I want to talk a little bit about some of the key elements based on research, based on trends that we're seeing across the country around culture that retains. So why does this matter? And as you can see, right, a strong and supportive culture can attract high quality teacher candidates, can drive increased retention while advancing the LEA's goals for students, right? So culture has a huge, huge influence and sort of impact on attracting and retaining great talent. So think it from the district perspective first. So systems and programs and policies that recognize and celebrate teachers, right, for their contributions. Think of Teacher of the Year celebrations, right? Think of other both grand, if you will, grandiose events, but also smaller events too. Things that recognize and celebrate teachers. In the chat just now, they talked about recognition, right? Hugely important. Also about career advancement opportunities, right? So from the district perspective, these are more structured programs, right? Usually tied to differentiated compensation to entice, to attract, staff to see, hey, there might be a different pathway, alternative pathways, if you will, other than just going through the traditional assistant principal to principal pathway. Then also talking about encouraging high-performing teachers to leverage the impact through these roles, right? So not only is it about providing a diverse set, a robust set of different opportunities, right? But how can we start to marry these to the impact and roles and opportunities that we as a system really need? If we know that there's a big, for example, if we know that there's a big need around leveraging data more and how we're leveraging data, not only to drive accountability, but also to drive sort of how do we intervene and provide support, differentiate for students. There could be career ladder or teacher leadership opportunities really focus around data and how are you starting to use that to build up the rest of the team. So that was at the district level. Now at the school level, or the building level, right? Teachers believe that their work matters, right? I mean, if I were to ask you to think of a huge accomplishment you might have had in your current position or a past position that you might have held, right? But when you start to see that, gee, the work that I actually accomplish or we actually accomplish and how that ties to the overall goals of your particular team or your school, if you will, it's a great feeling, right? So how can we foster that? And that's definitely the number one or the first issue around driving great culture. The second one, feeling connected with others. I know we saw in the chat, Tiffany mentioned we're like a family, right? So it's part of that, right? It's not only feeling connected with others, but it's also knowing that I can go to my peers for either informal or formal support as I'm struggling with certain things, knowing that I have this sort of village, if you will, to help me. Teachers remain excited and engaged by their work. And this is the same thing. I know there's a lot of research that talks about a resilience bank. And the concept of that is we know how hard this work is, right? Teachers, administrators, even folks in the central office staff, we know we struggle quite a bit with whether it be changes in funding, among other changes, right? So think of what are the things that we can hang on to, if you will, to remind us, to keep us excited and engaged. And I think the last one, definitely, if not as important, probably most important, teachers feel respected, right? Not only from their administrators, but it goes back to this sense of family, right? It's respect from my peers. It's a respect from my coworkers. It's also respect from teachers in the community as well. So think of these four things as important attributes or elements, if you will, to driving a great culture. And as we start to dive into the case studies, you're going to see these themes uh, come out, come on top again. All right. So again, via chat, I'm going to ask you at a high level, do these feel right? What's missing? And I'm going to scroll back one slide to show you the four elements that we talked about. But yeah, via chat, if you don't mind sharing if these resonate with you or what else is there that I may not have mentioned that's also very critical to driving a great culture. Tiffany, yep, compensation, as we mentioned in that cycle, hugely important, right? Yep, having a voice, and you're going to hear that theme a lot. And I think having a voice could be part of the connection part. It could also be part about feeling respected, right? Being asked to provide their input, right? Time, definitely, Tracy. Yep. Succession planning, Tina, hugely important, right? Definitely dovetails nice with this concept of career management, right? In a career ladder program, right? Thank you, Christina, for reading my mind. Alternative pathways to leadership for sure. All right, these are wonderful. Again, as ideas percolate and come up top of mind for you, please share. So this is a quick reminder, if you will, around this concept of retention, is that yes, the building leader, the principal, the supervisor has a huge role, but we also want to point out that there's other key roles to drive retention. At the system level or the district level, think of the structures, policies. This could be, as Tiffany mentioned, compensation, right? How do we compensate our staff, right? What are the requirements to advance, if you will? Leveraging data. It's about identifying and marshaling resource, about building capacity as well. So think of that at the highest level from the central office, if you will. Then at the supervisor principal level, this is about creating and executing individual retention plans. If you recall in the first webinar, if you were a part of that, we talked a lot about how retention has to be individualized. What motivates myself versus others, yeah, we might have some things in common, but we might also have come up, if you will, or our path to this job might have been very different. And because of that, our support needs could vary quite a bit. And then as a few of you mentioned already about teacher voice, right? Teacher employee, communicating what matters to them. So it's not only about them communicating what matters to them, but it's also about think of from a system or principal perspective, providing them the opportunity to do so, right? And this could be both informal and it could also be formal as well. And we'll talk a little bit about some options together soon.
So, as we dig into the elements of a strong workplace culture that Craig just reviewed, let's just take a quick minute to see if we align on the significant impact that workplace culture has on the decision an employee makes to come to a school, to join the staff at a school, the decision whether to remain at that school year over year, and most importantly, the decision about leaving a school. So, very quickly in the chat, just agree that this has a significant impact on people who come and people who decide to leave. So, agree, not sure, or disagree. Just put in the chat whether or not we're in agreement about the importance of workplace culture. So I don't think any of us are surprised because of our own experiences as employees that there's a strong agreement about the importance of workplace culture. And yet, sometimes we don't stop and even define what workplace culture is, let alone be intentional about the actions and the structures that can contribute to building a strong workplace culture. So, a commonly used definition for workplace culture is the character and personality of an organization. And I like that definition because I think it's very simple, but character really gets to, is it values driven? Is there a fairness to the workplace culture? And that personality goes to things like, is it respectful? Is it collaborative? Is it kind? Those sorts of elements. So, with that as a little bit of framing about how we think, we're going to use some mini scenarios to try to get at some of the actions, some of the elements that actually influence whether or not a workplace culture is strong, or whether it is one that really is not able to retain employees. They're looking for a move to find a culture that is more beneficial to them. So we have four mini scenarios, and I would love it if we could have, and just to lay these out, each of them on the left-hand side in blue has a description of a strong workplace culture. And then that same teacher, should they be in a culture that is not supportive, what that would look like. And that's on the right. So I would love it if, and I'm going to cold call a bit, so thank you in advance. Christina, would you mind coming off of mute and reading that mini scenario in blue? Yeah, there you go. Could I,
Okay, forgive me. I'm doing it from my phone.
oh, are
So,
you able to?
oh yeah, no, I'm not driving. I was, but now I'm home. I just never switched to the computer.
Okay,
So read the one in blue.
please. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. B is a sixth grade math teacher in middle school. He has been there for 5 years and is starting to wonder what is next for him. He is a strong teacher. The seventh grade teachers regularly talk to him about how they have an easy job because he has prepared students so well for the content. This past year, the school won an award for eighth grade math scores, and the principal made it clear that it was a team effort and recognized the entire math department for their efforts. Mr. B was thinking about leaving and going back to school to get a more advanced degree. His principal found an amazing PD program for Mr. B, though, and and enrolled him in it and freed up one period so he could participate.
Thank you so much, Christina. So that's the experience of this individual in a strong workplace culture. If we go to the right-hand side, just quickly, because the beginning sentences are the same, in this scenario, Mr. B feels that other teachers resent him because he doesn't have the challenges that they do. He wants to work with the other grades to align the curriculum, but the teachers are siloed and he can't get them into any meaningful conversation. He knows the math scores have gone up, but nobody, not even his department chair, thanked him or acknowledged his efforts in that move. He's thinking about leaving and going back to a school to get a more advanced degree. It would cost money, but he's really tired of feeling alone. So that's the same teacher, but sort of what's happening depending on the culture. So if we go to the next slide, this is just a slide that allows you to really reflect on the structures and the actions that really hinder or advance and allow a culture that is supportive. So what are those specific things that we see in this scenario? And so there is a place in your workbook, which Megan referenced earlier in the kickoff, that really allows you to sort of reflect on these things, note what actions you saw in this scenario, and who was responsible for those actions. So if we go to the next slide, because I'm going to ask for some sharing after we look at the next slide about this core element 1. But this is the same scenario that Christina just read to us. But if you see now in green, there it's underlined and highlighted some of the specific actions that really took place to make this a strong workplace culture. So Mr. B received informal recognition and respect between and among teachers. His peers were like, yeah, boy, they were acknowledging the role that he plays in the school. And so we should think as leaders, how can we sort of create or cultivate that kind of a culture? Maybe it's at a team meeting or at a staff meeting, you have the opportunity for teachers to pair up and share something that they appreciate or, have seen in the person that they're talking to. Or maybe it is a post-it wall in the teacher's room where you get to post an appreciation for somebody on the staff. But those kinds of things really cultivate this kind of a culture. In this scenario, the principal was intentional about including and acknowledging teamwork. And the school leader, as you heard, had an actionable, personalized retention plan that really appealed to this particular high-performing teacher. So I'd love on this core element of believing that their work matters. Is anyone able to come off mute and share an example from your experience that demonstrates teachers believed their work mattered and that they were valued for their contributions? Any experiences that you could share that would bring this element to life?
And if you'd like to come off mute, you can raise your hand and we will take you off of mute if you'd like.
Thanks, Tracy. And that'd be great. And Christina as well.
So Tracy, do you want to go first and then Christina?
Sorry, Christina can go first. I accidentally put that in the chat. I'm sorry.
All right, Christina, you can go ahead. Thank you.
No problem. So I think great opportunity recently within our district that we were able to do this with teachers is around our strategic planning and forming our goal over the next 5 years, where we tapped teachers whose work aligned with our 4 goal areas and brought them on to be co-chairs of each goal to be able to select their own committees and lead the work and shape the goals moving forward, whether they wanted to be in leadership or they just had a passion around that area.
Thank you so much, Christina. I mean, that was like just textbook when you look at this slide and it's described as they're valued, they have knowledge and skills and relate to the success of the district. I mean, what a great example of how to really let a teacher know that they matter, that their input is important. Thank you so much. And Tracy, can we take you off mute? Thanks so much.
Sure. I have one that's like a little bit of a smaller thank you. In my school, we do each department nominates a teacher of the week, and the whole school participates. So like the English department can go first, and then the whole school participates and nominates an English teacher of the week. And then like that English or that teacher who is nominated can leave like a half hour early one day, just like something small.
Yeah, I love it. And we say that small, but micro actions done repeatedly have more impact than the periodic great big pieces of recognition. So I love those kinds of examples of there's just a consistent attention to those micro actions that build slowly over time, a strong and durable workplace culture. So if we go to core element 2, I would appreciate it. Adam, are you able to come off mute and read about Ms. M in the green block?
Sure. Miss M is a 10th grade English teacher. She has been at the school for 10 years, and this year the school has a new principal. In the past, the school has been pretty siloed and each department kept to themselves. This led to people thinking that their department was better than the other. But this new principal has been making some real moves into changing this. He is asking people who work across grade level teams and more. And Miss M is amazed by what she is hearing. She has no idea that the math teacher read poetry with his class or that the science teacher had high standards for writing. She realizes that some of the teachers had relationships with students she struggled with. This simply changed this simple change has really motivated her.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Mhm.
So that same teacher in a different school with a different or the same school, but if it did not have a strong and supportive workplace culture, that new principal, it began with the new principal comes in and doesn't make any changes. There are a number of new teachers, and yet Ms. M is feeling alone. She's frustrated because she's struggling with some of the 10th graders, but feels that the other teachers just let the students get away with the behaviors, and she's struggling. She decides that, yep, next year she's going to try to change schools. So again, if we go to the next slide, this is one that again really prompts you to think about the actions, the structures, the strategies, what was happening in those two scenarios that again either allowed or hindered this core element of feeling like you belong, as though there is connection with your peers and your colleagues. So if we go to the next slide, we've taken that scenario and we have underlined and highlighted the actual actions or sort of the evidence of what is contributing to a really strong culture in that green box. And so there we see that the new principal really came in, and it sounds like one of the priorities of the new leader was to assess the culture, the workplace culture that he or she was inheriting, and immediately started to work to dismantle the silos and create more collaboration among the teams. And so the effect of that was now this teacher, Ms. M, is really finding that she has colleagues who kind of share her experiences. They can exchange ideas, what's working for you, with maybe this challenging student, get some strategies, some ideas, maybe partner up about how to sort of approach some of the issues that she's facing. And all of a sudden, that isolation that teachers can feel starts to dissipate. You feel as though you're a team, you have somebody you can share with, they can really work with, and together find some strong solutions potentially, and make the job easier, quite frankly, and a better place really to practice your craft of teaching. So again, I'd love to see if there's anybody that's willing to come off mute and share an example from your experience of, schools or situations you've seen where there really has been evidence that there's a connection between the staff members, that they are really starting to solve problems together and really work as a team around some of the things that they face. So any examples somebody can share?
Tracy and Tina volunteered already, or Tina. Do I have the text right? Sorry.
Awesome. Thanks,
Yeah,
Tina.
Tina, you can come off mute now. Thank you.
I think I unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking one of the things that we do here is allowing teachers to making sure that our roster has their planning time being strategic about their planning time and making sure that we structure content folks alongside of each other so that they may not be teaching the same grade but are teaching the same content so they can plan together. I think that's a way for teachers to feel connected. And also in the middle school here, when sixth graders go to seventh grade, we have those teams meet together, and we also have them create the class rosters for the next year so that they know how to collaborate and talk about the students and know students who energies may or may not mix well together. They can have those conversations. So just allowing them to have a voice at the table and to talk to their colleagues about passing students on to the next grade and what's needed of that student. I think those means of collaboration are really important. I think teachers feel connected and they feel like they're supporting each other or setting each other up for success.
Absolutely. Tina, such strong structure, such intentionality, making certain that you're constructing a schedule so that, that preparation time is available to teachers on a team, et cetera. I mean, that's the kind of thing. It's not just, bringing in breakfast or something like that. It is really recognizing the professionalism and supporting that in a way that connects staff together and allows them to feel as a team and dissipates that feeling of isolation that so often teachers report. So really good examples of how to intentionally create those kinds of connections between peers. And Tracy, I think, were you able to share as well?
I think that was for the last one.
Yeah, I think that was
Got
for
it. Okay,
good.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So if we go to core element 3, Tiffany, are you willing to come off mute and read that brief scenario in green on the left-hand side?
Yes, I think I'm off mute.
You are.
Okay, yep. Mr. R is a third grade teacher. He has been teaching for 30 years. He is considering retirement in the next few years, but he loves his school and his principal. His principal explicitly talks with each teacher about how they want to grow the next year. One year, Mr. R was able to try coaching another teacher. Another year, he was able to help create the master schedule for the school. This year, he is digging into a new science curriculum and leading the charge on its adoption. He likes that he does not have to choose one pathway, but he can keep learning and growing in a variety of different ways and get to know his colleagues in so many different ways. It makes teaching exciting.
Thank you so much. So Mr. R, same Mr. R, if in that school there was not a strong and supportive workplace culture, he always wanted and was always interested in doing work like coaching, scheduling, curriculum, but he never wanted to leave the classroom. So he never, mentioned it on his own, and no one ever asked him, about career aspirations. And so as he looks back at his career, he feels sad, but he focuses on what's ahead and what he can do in his retirement. Maybe at that time he can support teachers once he leaves the classroom. So a real missed opportunity for Mr. R if he wasn't in a strong and supportive workplace culture where there is a real effort to ensure that teachers remain engaged and excited and motivated by their work, and that they have opportunities to learn and grow and really kind of have fun with trying new things out and seeing how they fit. So if we go to the next slide, again, we've seen this slide that really encourages, if you're doing this, going through this deck, maybe with your leadership team back in a district, really trying to pull out those action structures and strategies. And again, there is a place in your workbook to do that. In the interest of time today, we're going to move on and once again, look at that same scenario where we've highlighted some of the actions in the scenario that really contribute to this core element of making certain that teachers feel engaged by their work and that they have and are aware of those opportunities to learn and grow. And importantly, to do that whenever possible in the school setting that they have, that these opportunities can be formal and informal, but importantly, having some opportunities to contribute in their school so they're not faced with that decision of leaving the school or leaving the district. So what we saw in this was essentially, it seems as though Mr. R had a stay conversation. A school leader, this school leader, really was interested in personalized approaches to retention by understanding and supporting this teacher in terms of some of the things that he was really excited to try. And again, really providing option. We saw that this principal went out and really found opportunities for this particular strong staff member to grow, to advance his professional career, and do that within the school setting, and allowed him to really retain and stay excited about the profession of teaching. So again, once again, I'd love it if this is resonating with anyone, if you're willing to come off mute and share an example from your own experience where you were able to really provide an opportunity for a teacher to learn, to grow, or just have fun, to just keep that sense of excitement and fun alive in your school and among your staff. Awesome, Tina. We'll take you up on it. That would be great.
Yeah, I was when you read this, it made me think we have we have what we call HPOT teachers, so they're our high performing teachers, the teachers that you would never want to see walk out the door. And so we do have those conversations with them. I guess you call them state conversations, but just making sure that as assistant principals, we are and director at the director level, we are also making sure that we have our eyes on those folks who just have that high will, high skill, those go-getters, those the ones who are always, leading out front. So we make sure that we have conversations with them and find what it is that they want to do, like what next steps look like for them, and then make sure we try to tie that. And sometimes it looks like, maybe working over the summer working from home over the summer, helping us develop curriculum or work on a pacing guide or something that they like either love to do or enjoy doing, and we may need help with it at the leadership level. So just, honing in on those opportunities for teachers to be successful, and also talking to them about like, teachers who have bachelor's degrees wanting to go back to get master's degrees, making sure that we're really on top of all of our staff members and making sure that we're growing and developing them. And, one of our goals here is to inspire, engage, and develop and create master teachers. And so we make concerted efforts to do that on a regular basis as a leadership team.
That's great, Tina. I would want to be on your team. I mean, the fact that you know teachers and know what they want and you're there to support them as they grow. I mean, that kind of a culture is one where it's going to attract teachers and it's going to hold teachers. Thank you so much for sharing. So if we go to the last core element 4, this is just fundamental. The teachers feel respected. Their administrators appreciate their contributions, they are treated with equity, and their voice is heard. So Amy, are you able to come off mute perhaps and read the scenario on the left in green?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Miss L is a special education teacher at a very large K-8 school. She's been there about 3 years, and someone asked her why she doesn't want to be in a smaller school when she can have more of a chance to have a real voice in the school. She says she doesn't feel like she has to. The administrator in charge of her department is very aware of her strengths and supports her in highlighting them. She feels like the teachers are treated fairly. She's treated with the same level of respect as a more veteran teacher. And the leadership always asks about decisions that impact her. She's on a faculty council that the principal leads, and there are regular surveys that come out from leadership. And she knows how to reach her administrators anytime she needs.
Awesome. And we've talked in this retention series about the importance of being very attentive to the experience of new teachers or early career teachers. And so I think this scenario is particularly relevant in that it really pulls out that new teachers don't need to wait in line or wait in, behind those with more experience, that every teacher in a building is able to contribute. So when we think about what Ms. L's experience might have been in a less supportive culture, Ms. L realizes that her administrators really don't know much about what is happening in her classroom outside of the formal observation days when they come in, for that specific purpose. And she has opinions about school decisions, but the culture of the school is such that that she has to wait until she's been at the school a lot longer before her voice will really matter. She talks to her grade level chair, but she has never had a one-on-one conversation with her administrator that wasn't supervisory in nature. So again, if we go to the slide that really reminds us that we have to think about structures and strategies, we have to be intentional about building these elements of a strong workplace culture. Again, you have your workbook and other places to really reflect on that. But again, in the interest of time, we'll go to this core element 4 and see those elements that are highlighted that really pull out the actions and the strategies that helped teachers in this particular school feel respected, know that administrators appreciated their contributions, and that their voice is heard. So in this case, it was evident that the school leader knew the strengths and expertise of his team and intentionally recognized those. All the teachers were able to feel respected, from the novice teachers to the most experienced. There was not this sense of you have to kind of wait your turn, or until you've been here for a certain amount of time, you don't really have almost the right, to contribute or share your thoughts and ideas with the group. And it's also important to recognize, when we think about sort of structures, that communication channels, in this scenario and in schools with a strong workplace culture, those communication channels are open and they flow in both directions. It's not top down, but that bottom up flow of discussion, conversation, and input is healthy. Teachers know how they can have input, etc. So making certain that communication is flowing in both directions through healthy and open channels is really important to this work. So maybe if there's one person that is willing to share, if this resonated with you, an example of, a workplace culture you've seen where teachers just really were respected and they were very aware that their contributions were appreciated and that their voice mattered. Anyone willing to share? Awesome. Well, I appreciate so much everybody who did come on and share just awesome examples of how you've built and seen strong workplace cultures. Appreciate that so much. So I'll turn it over to you, Craig.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jody, for that. And thank you, everyone. Their participation was great. Just hearing like real examples of what's being done definitely resonates and aligns with what sort of the research is showing too. So that's been really wonderful. So the next section, we just want to talk about some strategy banks, right? Some things to consider. And when you look at this, whether you work in central office or you work in a school, we think some of these are flexible in the sense that they both could be applied from both different perspectives, right? Because if you remember before, when we talk about the shared role of retention, every group, right, or different stakeholders have different roles, right, important roles toward retention. So the first one, and we talk a lot about this, right, we saw this in a case study, but around career management systems, right, what are the opportunities, right, knowing what my team is interested in. We saw some case studies of folks who wanted to do more, they didn't want to leave the classroom. They definitely wanted to work with their administrator to figure out what are the options are. And one example we saw was someone was able to free up some time in order for he to pursue that PD opportunity, right? And we see a lot of different examples. Some are very formal, driven by money, but I also want to share a quick example. There are examples we see that's actually not tied to money. And one example I would share, there's one district we work with, they called it the superintendent's cabinet. So essentially what happened was they invited teachers who were interested to, and they actually had to apply to become part of this working network group that would meet with the superintendent monthly. And the way this would work is the agenda was sort of shared. Half of it was owned by the superintendent and her team, where they would say, here are some areas that we definitely wanted discussion, feedback. I know we saw in the chat, having voices is critically important, but this was sort of a advisor group to be at ground zero and provide feedback on maybe a new initiative, a testing initiative, or something that might be coming down the pipe. The other half of the agenda, the teachers owned, and they could use this to either bring up concerns, questions, or talk about certain things that they know that, with having their finger on the pulse of the culture within their schools or across, their peers, they definitely have this opportunity to share. So, and that was not compensated, but yet it was a very formal, rigorous process for those to apply. But that's just one example of not everything has to be driven by money. And I want to admit money is very critical. I'm not saying it's not. The other one is supporting principals, right? So I know we talked about state conversations, and I know a couple of you mentioned sort of this concept. And when we talk about state conversations, think of it as this could be a 4-minute water cooler type conversation, right? But as an example that was shared earlier, knowing who your rock stars are, and I would argue that if you talk to any administrator or any principal in a building and you ask them, look, not even using data, who are your rock stars? They're going to be able to rattle those off, rattle that list off pretty quickly, right? But then the idea is that how do you have these quick conversations, just really checking in how they're doing, praising them, acknowledging their contribution, right? And we found that from experience, even if the employee is sharing things that, gee, I wish the school was 15 miles closer to my house. We know that there are issues that can't be changed, but just having that opportunity to voice those concerns do mean a lot. And then also the top one is about managing low performers. So as we know, sometimes, and especially in bigger districts, in my old district, a lot of times we had staff that floated from one school to the other. And it was hard to remove them. So they were excess every year. They were placed in a school, and wherever they would go, they were culture killers. So what you could do to support principals around managing low performance can also have a huge effect on culture, right? Because we do know that sometimes there's a sentiment that if you see a certain person getting away with things that they shouldn't be doing, it sends the wrong message, right? And it also sends sort of the wrong message around building a positive culture as well. Rewards and recognition, this can be both at the district level and the school level. And again, whether it's formal programs or on new teacher celebration, it could also be very informal as well. And I like when other folks shared examples about maybe using the bulletin board, right? Or sometimes I know when we visit schools, the PA system, a lot of times in the morning, that message is about, shouting out either someone's birthday or even just either small wins as well. And we also talked about teacher voice, right? This could be both formal and informal. So one example, we did school visits at a school in Florida. And one thing that the principal shared with us was, look, time, and I think someone mentioned this before, time is a huge challenge for everybody. Before you know it, there's your day's over. So what she did at dismissal and sometimes at arrival, she made sure that she touched base with her employees there because she knew that I would have a captive audience, right? And it's very informal. It could only be like a 2-minute conversation, but she used that as an opportunity to let people know how valued they are, let people know how appreciated they are, but also to provide them a quick, opportunity to share, hey, sort of what's going on with them and what are some challenges that the principal could maybe help them resolve. Flexibility in teaching schedules and approaches. So across industries, not in K-12, although in K-12 is important too. The big word now that we're hearing is mobility, right? Folks who are applying for jobs, and I know it's tougher if you're teaching, that you might not have the flexibility to work from home. You might not have the flexibility to have different hours because I might have different life space issues that I have to deal with at home. So we know that's going to be a challenge, right? But at the same time, too, flexibility, whether it is part-time, whether it's job sharing, there might be folks who don't want to do a full-time schedule, right? So what are your systems and policies in place to allow that flexibility? And again, it's not to the huge flexibility that a lot of other private sector companies can offer, but these are some things that might start to help move the needle in helping retain folks. Collaboration and teaming, we talked about the sense of family. We talked about who can I go to for help. Yes, there are formal mentors or formal coaches, but at the same time, schools with strong culture, it's not about formal roles. It's knowing that, yeah, I can pretty much go to anyone, or I know there's a group of folks I can go to get help on, right? Whether as simple as, gee, I don't know how to, I'm a brand new teacher. I don't know how to take attendance, right? Or there might be other things that might seem pretty basic, but they, it'd be great that they know that they can go someone to help with. Supports for teachers, health, safety, and well-being. And as we talk about sort of what we call life space issues, right? We know during COVID, it forced a lot of us to change the way we do things, whether we were ready or not, right? But because of that, it also opened the eyes of, gee, a lot of the challenges that employees have might be beyond the four walls of the building, right? So what can our community, what can our school do to maybe not address all that, but at least be understanding and supportive of it? The other example I'd quickly share, the same school we visited, they shared a story how one of their teachers was homeless. And so everyone started pinching in to help try to identify apartments, either or other options, right? Whether it would be temporary housing, just knowing that, if you have that hanging above you, when you show up to work, it's really going to affect, what you're doing day to day. So they understood that these are the things that we need to do as a family to support them. And the other thing we mentioned here is around benefits, employees' values such as wellness, focus initiatives, professional flexibility, and other structures. Again, there are some things that should go beyond the school, and the district should be providing some employee support programs as well. But this could also be partnership with the community as well. It doesn't have to be necessarily within your LEA, but knowing that there might be some resources outside that either the city or the community can also provide in identifying those and creating actual support programs, it can go a long way. All right, I'm gonna hand it off to Joey to share the questionnaire.
Thank you. So we've talked a lot in this webinar series about how retention begins on day one with a comprehensive, personalized new teacher experience and the importance of welcoming new staff members into the culture of a school, as we've talked about today. So this is an example of how a simple but personal sort of introductory bio about a new teacher can create a warm welcome and really accelerate the feeling of belonging in a new school and in a new setting. So, if Scott, are you able to just quickly read us this example of a bio of a new teacher and just let people share in the chat whether or not this is something that you think would help really somebody feel welcomed in a school environment? Scott, are you able to read that for us?
I think that person had to leave.
Okay, no worries. You can take a glance at this. It's really pulling out, where this individual went to school, how they made their way to this particular, where they went to college, and then how they made their way to this particular school. It highlights that this is a new town for him. It shares that he's thinking about trying to run, I think, a half marathon in a nearby big city. And he wants to get involved because he was as a youth with maybe starting a chess club at the school. And so he wants to, explore the possibility of starting one, and maybe there'd be somebody that wanted to partner with him. So in a very short way, something like this has the opportunity to make you sort of have a basis for really starting to engage from day one with a new teacher coming into this school. And so you say, well, how would you know those things? How could we do that? We've created a new teacher questionnaire that you can use to really, it can be optional, but allows a new teacher to share just these kinds of things, a little bit about their pathway to teaching, but also just some personal things about them, whether they're new to the town, new to the area, some of the things that they're excited to try and do either outside of work or in work, but allowing them to share that kind of information and then thinking about building a circulating a profile like this as somebody joins a new staff can really go a long way to paving that sort of warm welcome that leads to a sense of belonging. And we know how important that is, and that those sort of perceptions and feelings about whether or not this is a place where someone feels as though I made the right choice, and they really start to just, find ways to become part of the team sort of from the gate out. It's so important, really, really goes a long way to retaining that individual in the long run. So wanted to share that. Again, links and this is all in your workbook. And so we just end, get close to the end with just taking a gut check around what you are doing to really help teachers believe that their work matters, they feel connected to others, they're excited, they're engaged, and most importantly, they feel respected as individuals and as professionals. So again, we encourage you to reflect on that. If anyone has any final reflections, please feel free to share them in chat. But with that, we will start to wrap up.
Thank you, Jody. All right, we're going to close it off. We have a couple of minutes left here. As Megan mentioned before, you can see the URL at the bottom here. Not only can you see the recording for this webinar, but you can also view the recording for the first two. And the first one focused more on strategic retention as a concept. And the second one focused on the new teacher experience, and knowing that the new teacher experience, positive ones, if you will have a direct impact on whether they choose to stick around or not. Excuse me.
So I'm going to just make a couple of notes before you go. On this slide, if you are not already aware, the team I'm on, the statewide school improvement team, is providing our third annual in-person conference at no cost to schools and districts. This is open to all schools. They do not, and districts, they do not need to be in any designation for school improvement. And there's some information here. I won't read it all because I know you may need to go. But if you want to learn more, you can click on these links. You can register. Also, my email address is on the very last slide, and you can email me with any questions about it. And finally, on the last slide, there is a link to a very brief survey for feedback, if you wouldn't mind checking that out and just providing any feedback about this session. And we will stick around if anyone has any last questions or thoughts. But thank you so much for participating.